The radar screen pulsed a dull green in the darkened control room at Luke Air Force Base. Airman Travis Doyle leaned forward, squinting at the return that had just popped up at the edge of restricted airspace. The dot was small. Low altitude. Steady heading. Unannounced. Unidentified contact, he said, pointing. Altitude 1,000. No transponder. Speed 210 knots. Colonel Hewitt leaned over his shoulder, brow furrowing. Civilian? Doyle shook his head. Not likely. Too fast. Too low. Looks like a military signature. Maybe Wait just switched course again. She's cutting toward our northern corridor. Colonel turned, scrambled 2 jets. Now. 3 minutes later, twin F-16s screamed into the Arizona morning, climbing sharply into the sky. Captain Blake Martin sat calm in his cockpit, eyes flicking over the HUD. His wingman, Lieutenant Jared. Reeves followed close behind. Tower, this is Hammer Flight. We are airborne. Heading intercept vector 091. What's the contact doing now? The controller's voice crackled. Still no response. Radar suggests a 10 Warthog, class low and steady. Blake raised an eyebrow. A Warthog? Who the hell flies a Warthog through restricted airspace with no call-in? Your guess is as good as ours, said Command. Visual confirmation required. Do not engage unless threatened. Reeves cut in. Warthog's got teeth, Nan. That GAU-8 is no joke. Blake smiled faintly. Yeah, well, let's hope whoever's flying it has enough brain cells not to use it. They dropped low, slicing, through hot desert thermals. The horizon shimmered, mountains hazy in the distance. Then Reeves called out, visual at 9 o'clock low. Confirm 1A10. Looks ... old. Blake banked hard, swinging around. The jet came into view gray, battered, like something dragged from a forgotten battlefield. The paint was sun-bleached, tail scraped, and panels mismatched. But it flew straight. Steady. Where'd this relic come from? Reeves muttered. Looks like it's held together with duct tape. Getting closer, Blake said. Hold formation. He eased alongside the A-10's wing, close enough to see surface detail-faded USAF markings, burn streaks near the engine cowling. And then he froze. The tail number, painted in black, barely readable, but undeniably, there colon 77-0264. His stomach. Turned to ice. Reeves. Confirm that tail number, he said. There was a pause. Reeves' voice came back shaky. Double quotes, 7-7-0-2-6-4. At single quotes S. No way. That can't be. They both knew it instantly. That number wasn't just another aircraft ID. It was a legend. 22 years ago, 770264 was flown by Captain Elina Cruz on a mission in northern Iraq. She'd been escorting a convoy ambushed near the Mosul hills. Her last transmission had been pure chaos, shouting, gunfire, then silence. No wreckage was ever found, no parachute. She vanished. Posthumously awarded the Silver Star. Hero. Gone until now. Blake's voice was low. Command, this is Hammer 1. We have visual on aircraft. Confirmed A-10. Confirmed tail number, 770264. There was a long, unnatural pause. Then, repeat. That tail number, 7-7-0-2-6-4. Blake repeated, requesting instruction. More silence. Then came a voice Blake didn't recognize. Cold. Stern. This is NORAD command. That aircraft is not active. Repeat. That aircraft is listed as destroyed. Do not approach cockpit. Do not hail. Force landing at Davis-Monthan immediately. Reeves whispered. Destroyed? Then what the hell are we flying next to? Blake didn't answer. The Warthog flew like a veteran, firm hands on the stick, throttle handled with care. No erratic movement, no sign of distress. It obeyed altitude and pace like it was in formation training. But the pilot never waved, never responded, never turned their head. Blake couldn't take his eyes off the cockpit. He eased just a little. Closer. Inside, behind the glass, he could make out the shape of the pilot. Helmet on, oxygen mask attached, flight suit olive drab. No patches, no insignia, just ... stillness. He keyed up his mic again. A-10, this is USAF Intercept. Identify yourself. You are flying unauthorized in restricted airspace. Respond or you will be forced to land. No response. A 10 respond. Still nothing. Reeves said, I don't think she hears us. Or she's ignoring us, Blake said. Maybe ... Maybe she doesn't care. That thought sent a cold chill through both men, because it raised a question no one wanted to ask. What kind of pilot flies into active airspace without a call sign, in a plane that's been missing for 2 decades, and doesn't care if they're intercepted? They stayed on her wings as the Warthog banked gently, as if following some invisible path only she could see. Then, without a word, she began descending. Blake stiffened. She's complying. Davis Munthin's on the path. Reeves said. She's headed straight for it. They followed her down like guardian angels or prison guards. The jet coasted downward with deliberate grace, nose tilted just slightly toward the desert floor, trailing dust and time. On the ground, Davis Munthin. Air Force Base scrambled. Emergency crews lined the runway. Security units surrounded the strip. Spotters readied scopes. The tower braced for answers no one had as the A-10's wheels touched down. Her engines gave a tired, grinding whine. She taxied without input. No signals. No flare. Just calm obedience. Blake circled above and exhaled. She's down. Reeves didn't speak, because neither of them knew what would happen next. And both of them knew. Some stories weren't just lost. They were buried, and this one had just dug itself out of the grave. Blake kept the Warthog in his sights as it rolled to a slow halt at the far end of Davis Munthin's main runway. The jet didn't veer off course. It didn't throttle up. It didn't hesitate. It acted like it had been here before. He and Reeves circled above, each lost in thought. The same cold questions settling into their bones. What if it really is her? 22 years ago, 770264 had vanished from radar over the northern ridges of Iraq. The A-10 had been part of a CAS response, an ambushed Marine convoy, and the last radio message from Captain Elena Cruz was desperate. She'd been covering a medical evac when insurgents flanked. The hills, gunfire, screaming, then static. The story was passed around like a legend. She was young, brilliant, fearless. Her call sign was Ghostfire. She'd once flown a return sortie with a single wing flap still extended. Her name was etched in a plaque outside the base chapel. Blake had walked past it 100 times. Now she'd landed without permission in a jet no longer listed in the Air Force inventory, and not just landed, returned home. Command, Blake said finally. We are maintaining air hold. Request orders. Subject aircraft is stationary. Ground crew hasn't approached. What's your call? Static. At a new voice, not the one from the tower. Male, precise, cold. This is Colonel Vance. Both of you return to base. You are too. Submit full reports, verbal and written. Do not deviate. Do not discuss what you saw with anyone outside classified channels. Sir, Blake asked, who's handling the pilot? You are not cleared for that detail. What the hell does that mean? It means, the voice said firmly, you don't ask further. The line cut out. On the ground, military vehicles had closed around the Warthog like a perimeter. A Humvee with a mounted antenna arrived first. Then two matte black SUVs with tinted windows parked side by side, shielding the front of the jet from cameras or curious eyes. Not that anyone got close enough to see inside the canopy. Blake and Reeves landed 20 minutes later. Even as they taxied off the runway, they saw the swarm of command personnel, MPS, and men in unmarked uniforms moving toward the A-10. She still hadn't exited the cockpit. Reeves pulled his helmet off and sat there for a beat, sweat glistening on his brow despite the cockpit's cooling system. She never answered a single hail. No, she flew that damn thing like she just came off a training run. Yeah, Blake, he paused. That was Elena Cruz. I saw her. That was her silhouette, man. You don't forget someone like that. Blake didn't answer. He couldn't, because Reeves was right. The debrief room smelled like recycled air and stress. The lights were dim, the walls steel gray, and the atmosphere razor tight. Two men in suits sat across the table from them. Neither offered names. One had a stack of papers. The other had a pen and a stare like a laser. What you saw today is now classified under Level 9 authorization. Suit 1 began. You will write an account of your mission, verbatim, and then you will not speak of it again. Not to your commanding officer, not to your families, not to each other. You're telling us to forget we saw a dead woman flying a ghost jet? Reeves snapped. Suit 2 responded calmly. We're not asking you to forget. We're asking you to comply. Blake leaned forward, voice low. Was that Elena Cruz? The suits exchanged a glance. Suit 1 answered. The aircraft tail number you reported, 770264 matches, the one assigned to Captain Cruz. However, records show that aircraft was lost in combat and declared unrecoverable. You must have misidentified. That's bull, Blake said. We both saw it. Clear as day. Suit 2 pulled a document from his folder. It was Cruz's file. Blake recognized it from archives. Silver Star, Kier, Mia tags. Then they dropped something heavier onto the table. A printed satellite image of a wreck site. A burned-out canyon somewhere in Iraq. Cratered, ash-covered. Nothing that resembled an aircraft. This, Suit 1 said, tapping the image, is where we found 770264. Blake stared. So you're saying she died there? No, the man said. We're saying that's where we thought she died. He leaned forward until you escorted her back this morning. Meanwhile, outside, the ground crew finally dared to approach the jet. The canopy was still sealed. The engines had wound down nearly 30 minutes ago, and the cockpit was eerily silent. Two MPs flanked the nose wheel. A crew chief stepped up the ladder, tapped twice on the fuselage. No response. He reached for the manual release. The canopy hissed. It opened on its own. Everyone stepped back. The pilot inside face obscured by a dark visor slowly sat upright. Her movements were fluid, but strange, like someone waking from a long dream. She removed her helmet. It was her. Captain Elena Cruz, unchanged, unaged, same jawline, same black braid pulled tight under her collar, same sharp eyes, only now they looked tired, deeply tired, like she'd been flying for decades. I need maintenance, she said, voice calm. Fuel's low. The crew chief stood there, speechless. I said, she repeated. Fuel's low. Do you copy? He nodded. Yes, ma'am. The MPs didn't know whether to salute, arrest, or run. Inside the sealed hangar, the jet was immediately surrounded by engineers, command staff, and two forensic teams. The Warthog was filthy caked in sand and soot, and some sort of mineral that one geologist couldn't even identify. But it wasn't just grime. The flight logs were intact. Paper logs, old format, but filled line by line. Mission after mission. Dates, coordinates, kill counts, refuel stops, supply drops. All handwritten in Cruz's precise block script. The last entry? Return flight, hostile airspace, no remaining friendlies, autopilot disengaged, objective unknown. The ink was still drying. A silence settled over the group. It wasn't just a mystery anymore. It was an anomaly, one that flew itself home. The sun burned high over the Arizona desert as Elena Cruz stepped down from the ladder of her WARTHOG. She moved like a soldier returning from a long patrol, measured, alert, grounded. The hot wind ruffled her faded flight suit. Her boots landed on the tarmac with a thud so real that it shattered any illusion of ghost stories or holograms. She was real, alive, and no one had the slightest clue how. The base was frozen. Even the ever-shouting techs fell silent. Maintenance. Crews stood like statues. MPs stared through their sunglasses, hands twitching toward sidearms. They weren't sure they should draw. Her presence didn't radiate threat. It radiated truth, the kind that punched through logic like a missile through steel. She walked 10 feet, stopped, and turned to face the line of uniformed officers hastily forming near the hangar. Her eyes scanned them, calm, steady, assessing, requesting. Maintenance, she repeated, voice just loud enough. Fuels low. No one moved. Then a colonel stepped forward, silver oak leaves glinting in the sun. He hesitated just one beat too long. Captain Cruz? He asked, like someone testing the shape of a myth. She met his eyes and gave a single, crisp nod. Sir, you were declared Kia, he said cautiously. I was never KIA, she replied. He blinked. Then where have you been? Her answer came without delay. Flying. Simple, certain, unblinking. The colonel glanced at the jet behind her. Its hull bore the scars of sandstorms and shrapnel. The paint was faded. The tail number flaked but legible. The gun port under the nose was scorched, and the GAU-8 barrels bore heat-blistered steel. It hadn't just flown home. It had survived something. Captain, he said again, slower now. Can you account for your time since March 18th, 2003? She paused. That was it. That was the last date anyone had heard her voice. Cruz tilted her head slightly. That depends. Is the war over? Silence. Someone in the background murmured, "Oh my God." Inside the hangar, 2 generals and 3 intelligence officers watched the scene unfold via drone cam. The footage streamed in black and white. On a wide screen, a timestamp in the lower corner ticked forward relentlessly. They didn't speak. They didn't blink. The woman on screen was supposed to be dead. Her family had buried a folded flag. The Air Force had issued a final report. Her silver star hung in the Pentagon. Yet there she was standing on the tarmac with desert dust on her boots, not looking a day older than when she'd vanished. One of the analysts, a younger woman with short-cropped hair and a trembling hand, whispered, "That's her." Facial recognition matches, 99.6%. Another man leaned forward. "Did you say 99.6? She confirmed. Age regression software suggests no more than 2 years difference from her 2003 ID photo. How the hell is that possible? A general growled. No one had an answer. Meanwhile, back on the flight line, Elena was escorted gently but firmly by a squad of MPs toward an armored command truck positioned behind the hangars. She didn't resist. Her posture remained upright, military. She didn't ask questions. She didn't smile. Blake and Reeves stood off to the side, watching in stunned silence as she passed them. Cruz stopped briefly, just for a moment, and looked at Blake. He locked eyes with her. Those eyes, they weren't wild. They weren't confused. They weren't angry. They were aware. She recognized him, even though they'd never met. "Captain Martin," she said flatly. Blake stiffened. "Ma'am?" "You fly steady," she said. Then she walked past. He stood frozen, heart racing. She knew his name. How? Had someone briefed her? Had she seen him before? Reeves leaned in. Did she just? Blake nodded. They said nothing more. Because what the hell could they say? Inside the command truck, Elena sat across from a major in black BDUs and an intelligence officer who looked like he hadn't slept in days. A voice recorder clicked on. "Captain Elena Cruz, service number 84179-855. Confirm identity." "I confirm. You're aware you were declared missing in action?" "I was never missing. I knew where I was." "Where was that?" She didn't answer. The major adjusted a folder and continued. "Your aircraft was presumed destroyed in Iraq. No wreckage found. No radio contact. And now you've landed at Davis-Monthan in that very aircraft, unaged, unchanged. How do you explain this?" Elena looked him in the eye. "I didn't stop flying," the officer frowned. "We need specifics." "You wouldn't understand specifics. Try us." Cruz folded her hands calmly. "I flew through 37 missions after Mosul. Most were deep strikes. Supply protections. Convoy covers. Targets that didn't exist in your reports." The intel officer shifted uneasily. "There have been no authorized missions assigned to 770264 since 2003. Those operations never happened." Elena's reply was almost too calm. "I flew them anyway." Back in the sealed hangar, engineers ran scans on the WARTHOG. They found strange anomalies. The airframe had no recent maintenance logs, yet the fuselage had been patched crudely with riveted metal. The radar signature was warped. Something in its electronics disrupted normal readings. Its flight computer housed corrupted logs, some in code no current technician could read, others written in plain text by hand. And the onboard camera footage? Completely intact. Hundreds of hours of grainy aerial footage. Convoys moving in sandstorms. Black-clad insurgents firing RPGs. Entire villages, ones that hadn't existed in maps for 15 years. Timestamped. Logged. Filed. 1. Video showed crews refueling mid-air, but the tanker bore no U.S. markings. Another showed a mountain range. No one could identify red stone. Strange glyphs painted on cliff faces. A final clip showed her jet flying through a wall of sand so thick the sky itself warped, like she wasn't flying in a place on Earth anymore, or in a time that matched reality. At 0200 hours, Base Command received a call directly from the Pentagon. Orders. Elena Cruz was to be isolated, monitored, and transferred. Within 24 hours. Her aircraft? Classified under Black Project Omega 9. No further contact. No further access. Scrub all radar and security logs. And for the rest of the base? A single line delivered via memo. You saw nothing. You heard nothing. No such jet landed here. Blake stared at that memo for a long time, then folded it in half, stuffed it in his locker, and sat in silence. Outside, somewhere beyond the chain-link fences and humming floodlights, Elena Cruz lay awake in a temporary quarters, cell, eyes open. Unmoving, she didn't need rest. She had slept enough. Between missions, and somewhere, still sealed in her cockpit console, was a worn paper logbook. Its final words. Objective incomplete. Awaiting orders. The desert night had fallen fast. By 2,100 hours. The aircraft hangar housing 770264 was under full lockdown. Barbed wire fences were doubled. 2 armed guards were posted at every door. No one entered without 5 levels of clearance and a retinal. Scan. To the rest of the base. It was just another classified arrival. nothing more. But those who had seen it land weren't sleeping. Blake Martin stood outside his quarters, eyes fixed on the far runway, where floodlights illuminated the silhouette of the Warthog through the haze. He couldn't stop staring, couldn't stop thinking. Her voice, her walk, her presence. She wasn't just alive. She wasn't just back. She still thought. She was in a war. Reeves emerged from the shadows, holding 2 paper cups of bad coffee. "She's still awake," he said, nodding toward the makeshift security cell inside Hangar C. "They haven't sedated her yet." "They won't," Blake replied. "You don't drug someone like that. She's sharper than everyone in that building." Reeves handed him a cup. "You know they're going to erase this. Every file. Every photo. Hell, even will be erased. If we talk." Blake didn't argue, because he already knew. Inside the command center, a team of hand-picked analysts huddled around a table filled with printouts from Elena Cruz's Warthog. Strange readings. Abnormal fuel composition. The sample pulled from her tanks matched old-school JP-8 specs, but the chemical stability didn't make sense. The molecules had degraded, but not naturally, almost like they'd been altered mid-flight. Then came the avionics. The GPS logs were corrupted but partially recoverable. When decrypted, they didn't match any recognized grid pattern. Coordinates led to locations that didn't exist, or worse, led to places that used to exist, but were now buried under rubble, renamed or wiped off maps entirely. One point led to a plateau in Syria, marked No Contact Zone -2012. Another logged multiple flyovers of a ravine in Afghanistan, except the ravine was destroyed by an earthquake in 2007. Her logs stopped aligning with Earth's timeline around 2004. And that was the moment when the senior analyst, a gray-bearded man who had served during Desert Storm, said aloud what nobody else wanted to admit. She wasn't flying through our world. Elena Cruz sat on a steel bunk inside the cell, staring at the wall. A single bulb buzzed overhead. Her eyes were open, unmoving, alert. No restraints. No cuffs. She wasn't dangerous. She was something else. A psychiatrist had tried to interview her. Young, clean-shaven, fresh from the VA hospital rotation. He came in with a clipboard and left 10 minutes later without saying a word. Helena had said only this: "Don't tell me I'm crazy. You've never seen what I've seen?" She hadn't spoken since, but she had written. The guards found scraps of paper next to her cot filled with diagrams, target grids, and scrawled notes in military shorthand. Names of towns no one recognized. Symbols no one could decipher. One page simply read, "They're not dead. They just learned how to fly differently." At 0300, a black convoy rolled into base through Gate 9. Unmarked. 5 SUVs. One medical van. No lights. No plates. The man who stepped out wore a dark suit, no insignia, and carried a briefcase handcuffed to his wrist. The guards didn't question him. They saluted. He entered the hangar alone. 15 minutes later, Elena Cruz was escorted from her holding room. Still alert, still silent. Blake saw her from across the tarmac. Her boots moved with certainty, not fear. She didn't flinch at the security wall of armed men, didn't speak when they opened the back door of the SUV. But just before she stepped in, she turned around slowly and looked at him. Through 3 layers of chain-link fence, 2 gates, and a football field of distance, she saw him. She raised 2 fingers to her temple. A half salute. And then she vanished behind black glass. The next morning, 770264 was gone. Literally. Not towed, not flown. Gone. The hangar was empty. No tire marks, no paperwork, no engine residue. Every security camera had been wiped. Every air Traffic control log was erased. Even the fuel reports were deleted from the base servers. It was as if the aircraft had never existed. Blake returned to his quarters, sat down, and found his locker open. Inside, resting on his folded fatigues, was a manila envelope. No stamp, no seal, just his name. Inside, a single photo. Elena Cruz, in full gear, standing on a dirt airstrip with her helmet under her arm. The A-10 behind her was scorched, but intact. The photo was old, faded at the corners. Her expression unreadable. On the back of the photo, written in red pen, asterisk, asterisk, not all missions are recorded. Not all pilots come home the same. Some of us are still flying. Asterisk, asterisk. Blake stared at the message for a long time, then placed the photo back in the envelope, folded it twice, and locked it away. Later that night, 2 aircraft technicians who had handled the Warthog's fuel samples went missing. The official report: family emergency. Immediate reassignment. The unofficial rumor? They had talked. Told someone about the chemical tests, about the strange compounds, about the GPS logs. That was enough. The base was in lockdown by morning. Even Reeves was reassigned, transferred to a weather recon squadron in Alaska with less than 12 hours' notice. His final words to Blake were muttered over beer in the mess hall. They're going to bury it. Everything. Her. That jet. Us. Blake nodded. They already started. Reeves hesitated. But she came back for a reason. She didn't get lost. She didn't just survive. She was sent. You know that, right? Blake met his eyes. I know. A beat. Then Reeves leaned in, whispered, so what did she bring with her? Blake didn't respond, because in his heart, he knew the answer wasn't what she brought back. It was what followed her, and it hadn't landed yet. In the windowless vault below Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, the recovered systems from 770264 lay dissected across 5 sealed rooms. Only 3 people were cleared to handle them. None had answers. The aircraft had vanished overnight from Gavis Moncton, but not before a technician, Senior Airman Khalid Pierce, had copied fragments of its data to an encrypted drive. He had no authorization. He didn't care. What he found didn't make sense, and it wouldn't leave his mind alone. The logs weren't just straying, they were impossible. Timestamps from future dates, coordinates that led to battlefields erased by history. Entries signed every single one by Capt. Elena Cruz. His hands trembled as he scrolled through line after line. 04APR2006, night cover near Helmand. Dust thick. 2 SAM launches. Evaded. Refueled 0300 over Black Hills. The 19th of November 2009. Convoy extraction. Coordinates redacted. No friendly signals. Still covered withdrawal. Radio silent. 7 Aussies 2013. Hostiles unmarked. Jet scrambled above. Clouds. No radar return. They weren't flying planes. 11 Jan 2018. Reached Northern Gate. Not alone. Not allowed past. Turned back. Engine damage minor. Khalid leaned back in his chair, eyes wide. What was the Northern Gate? Who wasn't flying planes? He checked the fuel cycle logs. According to the jet's internal systems, 770264 had been airborne, intermittently, for over 2 decades. There were no logged landings, no refueling stops at any U.S. base. The craft had remained operational, but not in any airspace known to Earth. And something else. One of the final log entries was tagged Deep Flight Initiated. The notes beside it simply read, Beyond Cloud Boundary. Unknown time distortion. Returning with residual. Residual? Residual what? At the Pentagon, in a sub-level briefing room beneath blue clearance corridors, a man in a 3-star uniform stared. at a grainy photo pinned to the wall. It showed Elena standing beside her at 10, holding a helmet covered in what appeared to be a fine black ash dot. Across from him sat a DARPA scientist who looked like she hadn't slept in days. Beside her, a quantum defense analyst and a linguist from Langley. The general didn't waste time. Tell me what she flew through. The scientist rubbed her eyes. There are theories, not answers. Try me. She wasn't flying through time in the linear sense, the analyst said. Based on her logs, flight recorder drift, and geotemporal mismatches, we believe she entered what's called a fragmented bubble pocket, a fold in spacetime, where past, future, and alternate timelines intersect. The linguist chimed in, voice hushed. We matched coordinates from her missions with lost battlefields, forgotten towns. Some of them never existed. Others were erased places covered by classified NATO operations. The general pointed at the photo, and she came back with, residual? Something stuck to her craft, the scientist confirmed. Particles that shouldn't exist, at least not here. The general sat down slowly. So she flew into somewhere we can't track, survived for 20 years, and came back on her own? Silence. Then the linguist asked the only question that mattered. What followed her? Far from the polished halls of the Pentagon, Blake Martin stared at the envelope for the 50th time. He hadn't opened it since Elena disappeared, but tonight felt different. He'd woken at 2:06 a.m. to the sound of jet engines outside, thunderous, shaking the windows. But when he looked out, the skies were clear, silent. Nothing flew overhead. He turned the photo over again. Her handwriting, bold, red, urgent. Some of us are still flying. He placed the envelope on his desk and opened his laptop. The military. Server access had been revoked. But Blake knew a backdoor. All pilots did. He searched the aircraft registry, 770264. Status: destroyed in action, March 18, 2003. Final location: classified pilot, Elena Cruz. Status: Kai I He. Clicked the tail number again. The page flickered. A new line appeared. Status: override, active. Blake's blood ran cold. The record corrected itself a moment later back to destroyed. But he'd seen it for 1 second. The system acknowledged that the Warthog wasn't dead. It was flying. Now, in a remote testing facility somewhere in Nevada. Elena Cruz sat inside a medical containment cell made of glass and steel. Doctors poked and prodded, asked questions, measured neurological activity. She tolerated it without emotion. They'd taken her blood, skin samples, retinal scans, the results. She was human, but her biology wasn't normal. Her blood was loaded with microscopic anomalies, unidentifiable proteins, and a strange metallic nanothread that shouldn't exist in any living body. It responded to magnetic pulses. It formed shifting patterns when exposed to white noise. When asked where she got it, she answered simply, "It got in when I crossed back." One doctor asked, "Crossed back from where?" She looked straight through him. "You'll see." Later that night, security footage showed her standing motionless at the far wall of her chamber, staring into the mirrored glass like she could see beyond it. Whispering. The audio, when enhanced, revealed a repeating phrase in her voice. "It didn't come alone. It didn't come alone. It didn't come alone." Meanwhile, strange events began to spread through nearby airbases. Radar glitches, missing patrols, pilots reporting chatter on unused frequencies sometimes. In Elena's voice, on July 17th, a routine training flight from Nellis went dark for 14 minutes. When it reappeared, both pilots were unconscious. Their flight recordings were corrupted. Their instruments all pointed due south into airspace they had never entered. The only message in the black, box was a whisper. Maintain altitude. Don't. Look below the clouds. When the cloud logs were reviewed, a single phrase was embedded deep in the metadata, left by an unknown user. Still flying. Coordinates unknown. Time fractured. Holding pattern engaged. A technician flagged the file. It was digitally signed 770264. Somewhere, deep in the Mojave Desert, a man stood alone in a small control tower, no longer listed on any map. He looked up from his screen as a dull roar built in the distance. Through the darkness, one aircraft emerged, low, gray, battered, but unmistakably alive. The A-10 Warthog watched in disbelief as it buzzed the old runway. And just before it vanished into the desert sky once more, he saw the tail number. Clear, solid, real. 77-0264. She was still flying, and the skies were no longer just ours. The first reported death came 2 weeks after Elena vanished from the Nevada facility. Official cause: cardiac arrest. Unofficial: terror. Dr. William Ennis, the lead neurologist on her case, was found dead in his lab, eyes wide, face frozen mid-scream. Security footage showed no intruder, no disturbance. But every wall panel inside his office was scratched from the inside, as if something had tried to claw its way out. Deep grooves 12 inches long, 3 fingers. Not human. Not animal. His notes were redacted by morning. His colleagues were reassigned or silenced, and his backup hard drive encrypted and hidden in a floor vent was found 2 days later by a janitor who didn't know what he was holding. The drive contained exactly 1 file. A still frame, grainy, blurry, but it showed Elena Cruz, eyes glowing faintly in night vision, standing in the corner of her glass cell, with a shadow behind her. Tall, unnatural. No features. Its hand was on her shoulder. Blake Martin couldn't sleep. He hadn't for days. The vision of that night, Elena's jet appearing out of nowhere. The F-16 pilots radioing in panic. The silence that followed kept clawing at the back of his mind like a recurring dream he couldn't escape. Since then, 8 aircraft had gone missing in American airspace. The stories never made the news, but the reports were real. Blake had friends, pilots. Some of them were now gone. The last one was Major Tom Bishop Henley, logged out of joint. Base Andrews, assigned to a high-altitude test flight, never returned. His last transmission? Just 2 words, "It's here." Then radio silence. His plane reappeared 6 hours later empty. No pilot, no signs of struggle. Just the cockpit canopy open, controls fried, and one thing scrawled into the dash, scratched by hand: "Don't let her fly again." In a dark sublevel of Langley, 2 analysts stared at a projected 3D map, a heat map of anomalies stretching across U.S. airspace. All began within days of Elena's return. Spikes of unexplained electromagnetic interference, air pressure distortions, birds vanishing mid-flight, civilian pilots reporting mirages in clear skies, fighter jets pushed off course by gravitational disturbances, not once, not twice, but 36 separate times. One analyst whispered, "They're corridors, flight lanes. Whatever came through, it's moving, and it's using our skies." The other pointed to the data. The paths all intersect, same spot. Where? A pause, then the answer came. Above. The Aleutian Trench, North Pacific. Dead zone, no satellites, no signal. A place where no aircraft dared to fly until now. 3 nights later, Elena Cruz stood inside an underground facility no one admitted existed. Not anymore. It had once been used for stealth prototype testing. Now it served a different purpose. Containment. Except they were no longer trying to contain her. They were protecting her from it. She stood at the far end of the corridor, eyes closed, hands outstretched against the cold steel of the blast door. It vibrated under her touch. A low hum, just beyond human hearing. A pulse that grew stronger every hour. She wasn't afraid. She was listening. Behind her, Director Albrecht, head of an unnamed division within the Department of Defense, watched. With narrowed eyes. "She says she hears it again," his assistant whispered. Albrecht nodded. "What does she hear this time?" "She called it ... echoes in the black wind." Albrecht grimaced. "We should have grounded her jet the second." It landed. "Sir, the jet is gone." "No," Albrecht said, eyes fixed on Elena. "It's not." In an abandoned hangar outside Roswell, New Mexico, a rogue team of civilian engineers and disavowed Air Force techs worked silently around a suspended fuselage. The remains of 770264, destroyed, relocated. The tail number had been scrubbed. The airframe reinforced with prototype materials. Cables snaked from its hull, the processors stacked like tombstones. And within the cockpit, something beat a pulse, rhythmic, not electronic. Like a heartbeat. The aircraft was changing. Growing. The lead tech, a former aerospace engineer, fired for leaking Pentagon flight logs, stepped back and whispered, "It's not metal anymore." The fuselage had absorbed every alloy, every bolt, and reformed them into a smooth living skin, a hybrid of machine and organic mesh. He opened the diagnostics panel. The display showed a status report that had appeared 5 minutes prior. Deep flight rebooting, vector realignment, complete pilot link. PNDING. It wasn't just waiting for her. It was calling to her. Meanwhile, Elena had stopped speaking again. No one could get a word out of her until they brought her a notebook. Filled 20 pages in 10 minutes. Symbols, numbers, flight paths. Strange aircraft silhouettes, not in any known inventory. And a sentence, written again and again. "I was not the only one they sent back." One analyst attempted to match the symbols to known alien languages. They weren't extraterrestrial. They were rotated military glyph, similar to those used in experimental stealth. Drone programs abandoned in the early 2000s. Programs rumored to have involved telemetry from non-linear airspace. Classified, buried, denied. And yet Elena was drawing them by hand. At 3:06 a.m. She escaped. No alarms. No forced entry. No footprints. Security. Footage showed her in her cell one moment, then gone the next. 1 second of static. When the video resumed, the bed was empty, and a message was left scratched into the glass. "You grounded me. But it's still flying." By sunrise, every radar installation west of the Rockies reported simultaneous sky disruptions. Silent blackouts. Lights flickering across mountains. Jets scrambled, but none returned. Only one was tracked, the A-10, WARTHOG.77-0264. Flying low, inverted, as if searching. But this time, it wasn't alone. Trailing behind it were shapes 3, maybe 4, undetectable by radar, but visible in infrared. Unmanned? Biological? Interdimensional? No one could say. Only that they moved like predators. In a private airfield in Montana, Blake Martin received an encrypted call. No name. Just coordinates, and one word spoken through static. Run. But he DIDN single quotes D. Instead, he opened the duffel bag beneath his bed, unwrapped the patch Elena had once given him, a weathered badge from her old squadron, and got into his truck. Coordinates led north, toward the Aleutian Trench, toward the storm in the sky, toward her, because deep down, he knew this wasn't about what came through the rift. This was about who she became to stop at. And if 770264 was airborne again. The final mission had already begun. It started with a blackout. Anchorage lost power at 2:11 a.m., then Cold Bay, then Shemya. Every radar installation from mainland Alaska to the outer Aleutians went dark. Satellites blinked out, not destroyed, just rejected. As if the sky had developed a kind of skin dot. Then came the hum, a low, guttural vibration that rattled bones and silenced birds. Fishermen described a war in the clouds, but no weapons were heard, only movement, like something pacing, circling, waiting dot, and in the middle of it all, radar briefly picked up one signal. One impossible ghost, .77-0264. Still airborne. Still defying physics. But this time, it wasn't a lone dot. It was leading dot at the Pentagon. The crisis response channel lit up. General Marcus Kane stared at the live feed recovered from a drone that survived. Only 17 seconds above the cloud line dot. In those 17 seconds, it captured a single frame. Elena's at 10 soaring through the upper atmosphere, wings blazing from friction. Behind it, a void, not a shadow, not an aircraft. Something without shape, a hole in the sky. And within it, flickers of cities, deserts, and oceans all wrong. Not this Earth, not this time. Kane slammed his fist into the console. How long? Until it opens fully? The DARPA rep swallowed hard. At current distortion rates, 90 minutes. And what happens when it does? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. They all knew. If that rift stayed open longer than 7 minutes, the event horizon would anchor itself. Time, gravity, and matter would rewrite themselves on our side. Nothing would survive. Unless someone closed it from the other side. Blake Martin arrived at the coordinates just after dawn. A wind-blasted tarmac near Anchica Island. Half-frozen hangars. A rusted comms tower blinking in and out of function. He stepped out of his truck and immediately felt it a pull, like the earth itself was tilting forward, urging him to move. She was close. Then came the roar, not mechanical. Not natural. Something between a pulse and a scream. He ran toward the hangar. Inside, surrounded by coils of wiring and armed guards, who barely acknowledged him, stood 770264. But this wasn't the Warthog he remembered. It was alive. The hull shimmered. In the cold, no longer gray, but black like cooled obsidian, shifting in and out of visibility. The cockpit pulsed. The engines didn't hum, they breathed. And standing beside it, eyes locked on the sky, was Elena Cruz. She didn't flinch when Blake approached. You followed. I always do. I told you not to. He looked her over. She didn't look. Aged, not tired, but not human either. Her eyes were wrong. Not evil, just elsewhere. Elena, what's happening? I crossed into a gate they were never supposed to open, she whispered. They don't fly like us. They move through memories, through trauma. And they learned from what I left behind. He frowned. What did you leave? My fear. The sky growled. A crack in the clouds widened, revealing a tear in the atmosphere bleeding light and shadow. She nodded toward her jet. I have to go back in. Alone. Seal it. No, not again. This time I might not come back. Blake stepped forward. Then let me go with you. She looked at him, eyes softening. You'd die in seconds. You don't know how to fly broken timelines. Elena, she touched his chest, you grounded me when no one else would. That's why they couldn't take me. But now I'm the only thing holding the breach back. He stepped away, breath caught. What are you now? I'm a host, she said, and they're looking for a new one. Back in D.C., military command had reached DEFCON 1. Squadrons were scrambled, but communications fell apart instantly. Fighters vanished. Drones reversed course mid-air. At least one pilot went insane mid-transmission, screaming about a cockpit made of eyes and a sky that bled old wars. The Secretary of Defense turned to Kane. If she can't close the gate? Kane didn't hesitate. We nuke the breach. And what if that doesn't work? He stared at the satellite feedback clouds spiraling like a living eye. Then God help us all. Elena climbed into the cockpit. The Warthog's interior had changed. No switches. No HUD, just light, threads. And a seat that molded to her like memory foam soaked in grief. Blake watched as her hands found invisible controls. The aircraft responded instantly, engines flaring without sound. "Elena," he called, voice cracking. "What's on the other side?" She hesitated. "The first version of us. The ones who never made it. They remember everything we lost." The jet began to lift. No runway needed. "Elena, wait. If I can't follow, tell me one thing." "What? What was the last thing you saw before you crossed over?" She smiled. "You." And then she was gone up into the black spiral, into the jaws of the rift. Inside the breach, time dissolved. Elena flew through frozen battlefields, Kandahar in reverse, Baghdad unbombed, her own crash repeating again and again. Ghosts of pilots flew beside her. Some she knew. Some never lived. All of them screamed silently, trapped in loops of decisions they never made. Then came the shapes, not ships, not aircraft, remnants, vast, skinless creatures woven from timelines, stitched together by grief and rage. They surged toward her, sensing the living in her. Wanting her, she dove, spiraled, fired flares that became shards of her own memory. Every maneuver cost her a piece of herself. But she pressed on deeper into the breach, at the heart of it. A pulse, white and hot, the anchor, the core of the rift. She lined up for the final run. But the shapes closed in hundreds now. Maybe more. A voice crackled in her helmet, one that shouldn't have been there. "You grounded me once." It was her own voice. "Now help me finish this." The fuselage split, revealing something hidden within the A-10 all along, a singularity core, dormant until now. She triggered it, and as the rift began to collapse, everything inside screamed, including her. From the ground, Blake watched the clouds. Part. First came light, then silence. Then nothing. The breach closed, the sky healed, the winds calmed, and 770264 was gone. No wreckage. No shockwave. No explosion. Just peace. 3 weeks later, strange signals began again, but this time they were focused, tight band. Direct. One message repeated over scrambled channels. Same frequency, same cadence. Host removed. Rift sealed. She flies no more. Then silence, until the last line. In her voice, "You grounded me. Thank you." And just like that, the signal faded, never heard again. The sky was calm again. The horizon bled soft pinks and oranges as dawn stretched over the Pacific. Blake Martin stood alone on the edge of the runway, where Elena's jet had vanished. The wind whispered through the dry grass, carrying memories. No one else could hear. He clutched the faded photo in his hand, worn from years of folding and unfolding. The one with Elena Cruz standing proud beside her Warthog. The woman who shouldn't have been alive. The pilot who flew beyond time itself. "Some of us are still flying," he murmured, eyes on the empty sky. It had been 3 weeks since the breach closed. 3 weeks since the impossible rift had folded shut like a wound healing. No more blackouts. No more missing pilots. The skies were silent. But Blake knew better. She wasn't gone. She was still flying. The military officially declared Elena Cruz's disappearance a mystery. A classified lost-to-service file sat in a vault somewhere, gathering dust. The world outside moved on. New wars flared. New aircraft filled the skies. But Blake never forgot. Every dawn, he came here. Sometimes with old comrades, sometimes alone. They shared stories, whispers, legends that had become truth. They spoke of the woman who flew beyond death, the pilot who returned when no one expected her, the warrior who carried the sky on her wings. But no one knew what she truly became. Late one evening, Blake received a package. No return address. Inside was a small, unmarked black box. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside lay a single item, a flight patch embroidered with Alana's squadron insignia. But this patch was different. Glowed faintly, pulsing like a heartbeat. Engraved on the back, in a hand that was both hers and not hers. For those who fly beyond, keep your wings steady. Until we meet again. Blake ran his fingers over the stitching, and a sudden chill washed over him. He felt her presence. Near. Watching. Waiting. That night. As Blake stared into the stars, he remembered Alana's final words before the breach. You grounded me when no one else would. Now I'm the only thing holding the breach back. But this isn't the end. It's only the beginning of a different war. He whispered back into the dark. Ben, I'll be ready. Years passed. Blake retired from active duty, but never left the base. He trained new pilots, passing on stories that no one believed, but everyone felt. About courage, about sacrifice, about the cost of flying where no map can follow. About Alana. Crews. And then, one cold winter morning, when the sky was a sharp blue and the snow crunched underfoot, Blake heard it. A distant roar, a familiar hum, a shadow crossing the horizon. He ran to the edge of the airfield. There, cutting through the clouds, was a jet. Not new, not old. The unmistakable silhouette of an A-10W ARTHOG. Tail number, glinting in the sun. 77-0264. It wasn't Alana, but it was her. Blake smiled through the cold wind, because some wings never rest, some pilots never land, and some missions last forever.